Today, here I am. I'm moving, and I'm moving to a new house and unpacking and packing, and lots of it's happening. So I'm looking at social media, and all of a sudden, I see people acting the fool, losing their mind, talking about some comments Stephen A. Smith made on the Sean Hannity show. And I see this 30 or 40-second clip that was posted. And anytime I hear some comments, what I like to do is I always like to say, what actually precipitated the comment? What set the comment up? What was the question? What was it? And so I want to walk through right now this whole segment, because even when I saw it at home, there were some problems that I had with it from a factual standpoint. So roll it.
All right. Now, last night we showed you a clip from my next guest who has a message for the Democratic Party. Here's a reminder.
It's much ado about nothing. To my liberal friends out there, all you're doing is showing that you're scared you can't beat them on the issues and the merits.
Here now with more. ESPN host, the one, the only, he hates to admit he's a friend of mine. You can admit it. Just say it. My friend Stephen A. Smith is here.
Of course we're friends, man.
Anyway, great to have you. I thought that was gutsy. I kind of like your podcast because you go off into, other topics besides the area of expertise that you're in, which is sports. You said that. First, the question I have is, what was the reaction to that?
Obviously, I took a lot of heat. A lot of people didn't like the fact that I said it. They wish that I had it. And when I give a damn, I'll let you know. I don't care. I'm going to speak my mind. I'm going to speak what I believe to be true. And when I think about Donald Trump, I think about this case in New York. I mean, I'm looking at the Democrats right now. And again, primarily, I have voted Democrat throughout my life, but I'm utterly disgusted with what I'm seeing, because it seems to me that they're trying to use the law and the courts. They've clearly politicized this thing with Donald Trump because they can't come up with a strategy to offset the momentum he's clearly gained. In at least 5 polls, he's up. He's up in the polls over Biden, in at least 5 polls that I counted. That's the reality of the situation. Despite the counts against them, the indictments against them, being impeached twice and all of this other stuff, he is the presumptive GOP nominee. And you don't seem to have the issues in your favor, you believe. So because of that, you're going to manipulate the system as best as you possibly can to avoid him possibly running for re-election again. That appears to be their strategy, but I'm here to tell you, it's not working. It's not working at all, and to be quite honest with you, I don't mind the fact that it's not working, because I might not be a supporter of Donald Trump, but I want him to lose the right way. I want him to lose because you have better ideas, and you make your case to the American people better than he does. That's why I want him to lose. I don't want him to lose the way they're trying to make him lose, because I actually think that the case in New York City is pretty weak, if not flat out bogus. Have you remember John Edwards? Have you remember Gary Hart? Have you remembered some of the things that Clinton has gone through? Now we're going to talk about a hush money case that took place while he was running for election in 2016, but he was in office until 2020, and now here you are in 2024, months before another election, that he's the presumptive GOP nominee, and this is what you're trying to do. It's a disgrace. It's weak. It's pathetic. And somebody needs to say it. The Democrats need to come up with a better strategy.
We all can have our opinion on something, but what we cannot have are our own facts on something. So what Stephen A. had to say in terms of by saying that this is bogus, here's the problem. What Donald Trump is on trial for is literally the exact same thing his attorney pled guilty on. Henry, go to my iPad. This is a press release from August 21st, 2018, from the Department of Justice, from the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Southern District of New York. It says Michael Cohen pleads guilty in Manhattan federal court to 8 counts, including criminal tax evasion and campaign finance violations. So wait a minute. If the charges against Trump are bogus, were the charges against Michael Cohen bogus? The facts are the facts. If you break the law, you break the law. Here we have the attorney for Donald Trump who pled guilty to the charges. That wasn't a Democratic setup. No Democrat made Donald Trump illegally pay off a porn star and use his attorney to hide the payoff because he did not want the voters to know about it. Let me remind Stephen A. and Sean Hannity, this happened before the election because Trump did not want the world to know that he paid off a porn star. This is called a fact. So it's hard to call Trump's trial bogus when it's literally the exact same charges that his own lawyer faced that he pled guilty to. So this is not a question of they're trying to get Trump. They got Cohen, and he pled guilty to the exact same thing. Now, when Stephen A. was talking there, he mentioned several people. He mentioned John Edwards, and he mentioned Bill Clinton. Interesting. Henry, go to my iPad. On June 3rd, 2011, this is a press release from the Department of Justice. Former Senate and presidential candidate John Edwards charged for alleged role in scheme to violate federal campaign finance laws. Now, this was, of course, after the fact. Now, remember, he was the VP nominee for John Kerry. He was charged in 2011. He, of course, was a former United States Senator. Was this Republicans going after a Democrat, John Edwards, in order to keep a Democrat out of the White House? Hold up. My bad. The date here says Friday, June 3rd, 2011. Oh, a Democrat was in the White House. Oh, I'm sorry. Was Obama president? Obama was elected 2009. Am I right? So this is 6-count indictment against former Senator John Edwards for violating federal election laws during his campaign for president of the United States. Quote, public servants are held to the same laws. This is the key. Public servants are held to the same laws as everyone else in this country. The position sought does not exempt anyone, even those running for president of the United States. See, here's the problem here. Because when I saw the segment, and then when I hear these conservatives, what they're suggesting is going after Donald Trump is just so wrong. But if you don't do wrong shit, they don't go after you. Has anyone bothered to remember that there's a reason why he is the first former president to ever be indicted after serving? Because he did wrong shit. Now, Stephen A. also mentioned, well, he did these things before he won, and they waited all this time. That's because there is a document in the Department of Justice, which, by the way, was written under the Richard Nixon Department of Justice, because it was written so he could not get indicted while president, that says you can't go after a president while they're in office. That's actually a DOJ letter. That's actually not a ruling from a judge. That's not a ruling from the Supreme Court. That's not a law from Congress. That is a memo written under the Nixon Department of Justice. These folks are facts. That's the case. Now, the actions of Trump took place before. Guess what? Can't go after him while he's president. You pursue the charges afterwards because he no longer has immunity from prosecution. So that's actually why you waited. And then when we talk about these cases against Donald Trump, when we look at these 4 indictments, okay, you got the hush money, you got that one. And then, of course, you have the federal indictments on classified documents in Florida. Why is that important? That's important because, let's remember, the Library of Congress kept asking Trump, the archives, can you turn the documents in? Can you turn them in? He wouldn't turn them in. Can you please turn the documents in? You wouldn't turn them in. Can you turn the documents in? He wouldn't turn them in. Can you turn the documents in? He wouldn't turn them in. The lawyers were negotiating with his lawyers for a very long time. He told his lawyers what he didn't have. Then, of course, he said, oh, no, I didn't move documents, but he did. He wasn't the only person who was charged. What did he? So, Stephen A., Sean Hannity, why is that a case? Because he broke the law. There's a sign above the Supreme Court says equal justice under law. This man has never been held to account. So how is he somehow being persecuted? All he had to do was turn the documents in. End of conversation. No FBI showing up at Mar-a-Lago, no lawyers, no indictments, no drama, no trial. No, he said, my documents. I can keep my documents. But he was wrong. They were classified documents. He did not declassify them while president. You can't declassify when you no longer have the power. So to even suggest that this case is political persecution, no, he broke the law. I just did a segment where a black man was pulled over for a broken taillight, and when the cops pulled him over, he had a civil issue, a civil warrant. They called, they said, yes, bring him in, and they tried to bring him in. He eventually gets shot. That happened. If you break the law, or if or you're alleged to break the law, you're going to go to trial. You have the third case. Okay? The 2020 election. Interfering with the election. Is this trial bogus? Did Donald Trump not call and say, find me those 11,000 votes? Oh, guess what? There have been at least 3 people who've already pled guilty who were indicted with Trump. So if this is a bogus case, why did they plead guilty? One of them was a lawyer. It could be because they realized their asses were guilty, and they agreed to testify against the other defendants, including Trump. You can't call that trial bogus. You can't say it's unfair, the Democrats are going after him. If you break the law, you break the law. This man is not above reproach. This man cannot just do whatever it is that he wants to do. Tish James in New York took him to court for inflating his assets. Is that bogus? Reminds me of a certain man named Dan Morales. Dan Morales was a former Attorney General of Texas. Henry, go to my iPad. Dan Morales pled guilty to mail fraud and filing a false tax return. Morales pled guilty to counts 9 and 11 of the March 6, 2003 indictment. He admitted that he backdated official government contracts and forged government records for his personal enrichment and that of his friends. Count 11 of the indictment references Morales claiming his 1998 income as $39,734 when he knew the income to be substantially in excess of the amount stated on his income tax return. So now let's compare. Dan Morales went to prison for 4 years. That's a federal indictment. Donald Trump was accused and went to civil court of inflating his assets in order to apply for business loans. The reason I know the Dan Morales story, Dan Morales did the exact same thing. He went and applied for houses and cars, inflating. So are we saying that the Dan Morales case was bogus? See, this is the problem when you don't want to deal with facts. I'm not dealing with emotion. Here's the reality. Donald Trump literally lied about the size of his condo in Trump Tower. You know the same man who they call small hands, and you know that bothered him because he thinks something else is small? He lied. He lied. He told them, oh, my apartment is 30,000 square feet. It wasn't. I think it was like 10 or 11. It's a lie. He literally lied to obtain loans. You can't do that. If Roland Martin filled out a loan application and said, I've got a 25,000 square foot house, and my house is valued at $4 million, and I got a 6,000 square foot house, and it's valued at $1 million, I lied. I can be prosecuted. So if I can be prosecuted, why can't Trump be prosecuted? Prosecuted and persecuted are two different things. Press play.
Because this ain't working.
Let me ask you this. We look at polls. Polls are always broken down demographically, and you see this major erosion in the Democratic base for Biden. African Americans, Hispanic Americans, young people, suburban women, for example. I mean, numbers that we've never seen before. In terms of a Democrat. If he doesn't get his base back, which I would argue he's been trying to do, starting with the State of the Union and his jacked up address, he's got no shot. And if Donald Trump could hold on to 5, 10, 15% of the numbers that he has now, he will win the next election. Why is that happening? That's my question.
Right there. Now see, right there would have been great for Stephen A. to say, Sean, allow me to correct you, because what Sean is doing is he is speaking about these polls, namely the New York Times and CNN poll that has been showing that, oh, Donald Trump is going to get he's getting 23% of black support. Okay? Really? That's what you've been seeing, right? Well, guess what? Do you know what Fox News hasn't done? And unfortunately, what most mainstream media hasn't done, but we've done? We actually talked to the two black pollsters who did polls that specifically surveyed black people. Terrence Woodbury did a poll for Higher Heights of America and the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation in Black Women's Roundtable. He did a poll. They specifically polled black people. Their poll is completely different from the New York Times CNN poll. Now, let me help y'all out with some basic math. If the New York Times CNN poll polled 800 people, that means they polled a very small number of black people. So of their poll, a small number of black people said, I'm backing Trump. So when the stories were done, oh my God, Trump is getting 23% of the black vote. They were hyperventilating on Fox News, on MSNBC, and CNN, and all about, oh my God, oh my God. They were like, oh my God, every single day, every single day. But then Terrence Woodbury's poll comes out, where 800 black people were polled. None of them covered it. Told a different story. Cornell Belcher, he did a poll for Black Pac, told a different story. Who did he poll? All black people. So if you're going to cite a poll on television, or in Sean Hannity's case, he tells Stephen A, 5 polls, that's where Stephen A should have said, let me help you out, Sean. This poll here of specifically black voters told a whole different story. That completely changes that narrative. But it's not just that. If you don't want to go with that poll, if you don't want to go with that one, well, guess what? The folks at Pew recently did a poll. And the folks at Pew recently showed that Trump ain't getting more than 10% of black voters. Oops. Say what? Did you just say that? In fact, check this out. I was sitting here looking at a tweet today, and you're gonna love this here. This came out, and it shows, and the tweet was, at this stage of the race, the black and Hispanic support for Biden at this stage is on par with previous years. Do you see that orange line? That's the 2020 election. The green line is 2016. So at this point, so you see right there where the purple line is, at this point right here, at about 15, 18 weeks, the numbers are on par with previous elections. This right here is net black support. Then you have net Hispanic support. So what you now are seeing Biden's poll numbers increase with black and Hispanic voters. Guess what you also are seeing while that is happening? You're now seeing Biden closing the gap in the various battleground states with Trump. Y'all, it's April. So to think that April is going to look like November is crazy. This is why research, studying, examining the issues absolutely matter. Press play.
Well, first of all, the streets don't seem safe, and people want safety. We can sit up there and lament, quote unquote, law and order, which is what Donald Trump used to verbalize. But the fact is, the American people like law and order. We want our streets safe. We want to make sure that you've committed a crime, you get to go to jail. You don't sit up there and get arrested and you're out the same day. You don't want to assault people and you're out the same day. That's number one. Obviously, number two, the economy, which is usually number one, because people don't understand this when it comes, especially the black folks. Okay, let me tell you something right now, Sean. When you talk about the economy, to black folks, that means money. To everybody, it means money, but especially to us, okay, who are no longer the dominant minority in this country. Those are the Latinos. When we talk about the economy, we're not talking about, the state of affairs economically or even the job participation rate. We're talking about the money that you keep in your pocket. When you go to the gas station and it's exorbitant prices, when you go to the supermarket and milk and bread and cheese and all of this other stuff is exorbitantly high compared to what it once was, that is a red flag to a lot of folks because the...
Right there. So we want to compare an economy pre-COVID to post-COVID. Sure, we can do that. While doing that, though, we might want to talk about that the black unemployment rate hit a lower point under Biden than it did under Trump. We might want to talk about that more black businesses have been created under Biden than Trump. we might want to talk about the fact that you have corporations that continue to jack up prices even though the supply chain has been significantly diminished. We might want to talk about those different things. But here's the deal. Even with all of that, the fact of the matter is, when you look at these numbers, and this right here was the Newsweek story that just dropped last week, Donald Trump's hopes of black support stung by a new poll. A new poll has suggested Donald Trump would not garner significant support from black voters in November election. This is the Pew Research poll. It says 83% of black voters favor the Democratic Party, a 3% decline from 1994 when 86% aligned in this way. 12% support the Republican Party. This marks a 1% decline from 94 when 13% supported the party. Y'all, this is the actual Pew Research story. So, here's my whole point. If we're going to talk about black voters and what they are saying, we can't speak anecdotally. We actually got to use data. And the data totally disagrees with the assessment. Press play.
Money you keep in your pocket is what tells you whether or not the economy is flourishing or not. So those are just a couple of components that come into the equation. And dare I say something that will probably be termed the most uncomfortable thing that I've ever had to articulate out of my mouth from a political perspective. But I got to tell you something. As much as people may have been abhorred by Donald Trump's statement weeks ago, talking about how black folks, he's hearing that black folks find him relatable because what he's going through is similar to what black Americans have gone through, he wasn't lying. He was telling the truth. When you see the law enforcement, the court system, and everything else being exercised.
Stop. Hold on. Because I want y'all to run that back. Because this right here is where I'm like, huh? So what Stephen A. is saying, because I actually posted a tweet, then he responded. What he is saying, because see, two things were said at one time. That's why I want y'all to roll it back. Two things were being said at one time. He says that he's not saying that Trump is being persecuted like black people. But so I want y'all to roll it back. I want y'all to play it again, because I'm going to unpack what he just said. Go.
That I've ever had to articulate out of my mouth from a political perspective. But I got to tell you something. As much as people may have been abhorred by Donald Trump's statement weeks ago, talking about how black folks, he's hearing that black folks find him relatable because what he's going through is similar to what black Americans have gone through, he wasn't lying. He was telling the truth. When you see the law enforcement, the court system, and everything else being exercised against him, it is something that black folks throughout this nation can relate to with some of our historic, iconic figures. We've seen that happen throughout society.
Stop right there.
No matter what.
I would have loved to know specifically what historic, iconic figures, because I know Dr. King went to jail. I know Dr. Jim Lawson went to jail. I know that they went to jail, but they did not hold classified documents. They did not pay off porn stars. They did not try to overturn an election. They did not overstate the value of their properties to apply for business loans. So therefore, there literally is no comparison. Press play.
What race, what ethnicity you may emanate from. We relate to you when you're suffering like that because we know we have.
Stop.
And that's what he articulated.
When you're suffering. Go to my iPad. This story is from June, this is from 2016. Hundreds claim Donald Trump doesn't pay his bills in full. Dozens of lawsuits allege the businessman didn't pay what he owed. And you go through right here. The small businessman won a bid for a $100,000 grand piano to install in Trump's Taj Mahal. Guess what? Trump refused to pay him, only paid $30,000. Show me a black man who could do that. 200 liens since the 1980s were filed by contractors and workers who said they were stiff. Show me a black woman who could do that. 253 subcontractors on a single project were not paid in full or on time. Show me a black woman who could get away with that. 24 Fair Labor Act violations by Trump Plaza Casino and Trump Mortgage for failure to pay minimum wage or overtime. Show me a black person who could do that. Show me a black person who could get away with having a fake university and have to shut it down and still run for president and still win. Show me, in fact, show me a black politician who actually, while in office, has refused to pay the bills for security at rallies they had and still run for president. I would love to see him. I would love to see him. Got a story right here. Donald Trump has a long history of not picking up the check. He loves promises unfulfilled and bills unpaid. Yo, please, by all means, show me somebody black who could get away with that. Black folk don't identify with Donald Trump because Donald Trump is not being persecuted. Show me a black person, please, who could be in court and the judge issue a gag order and then this person violates the gag order. Show me a black person in America who could insult a judge and his daughter and still be walking around free. Donald Trump did that. He did that. Press play.
As unpopular as it was, as much as we didn't like to hear it, it's the truth. And there's no way around it. Those are all contributing factors to the state of affairs with the slippage that appears to be taking fold when it comes to President Biden, unfortunately.
Back to me. That's simply not true. It's in the data. It's in the data. Black Pact poll, Higher Heights poll, Black Women's Roundtable poll, Pew Research poll. The last four. All of that other stuff was based upon one poll with a very tiny percentage of black people. This is why facts matter. This is why data matters. Not emotion, data. Not feelings, facts. And we know Sean Hannity ain't gonna cite any of these facts that counters Trump's lies because he believes it. One final point I'm gonna make, press play.
About racial disparity in our justice system. And you know what, Stephen A.? There has been. You're 1,000% right.
Roll that back. Roll that back. I need you to roll back what Sean Hannity just said.
You're talking about racial disparity in our justice system. And you know what, Stephen A.? There has been. You're 1,000% right. Now, just for the record.
Come back to me. All right. So here's Sean Hannity. Oh, Stephen A., you're absolutely right about racial disparity in the criminal justice system. Well, Sean, tell me the last time you actually covered that. Tell me, Sean, you have actually covered the case of Tara Moorhead, the white woman in Kansas, who for 40 years was putting black folks in jail, was putting black people, again, in jail, made up confessions. She now has surrendered her law license. She's going to get disbarred. Show me how many times you, Sean Hannity, have covered these cases of black men being shot by cops. Show me, Sean Hannity, how many times on your show you have fought for black men who were incarcerated in prison and wrongfully convicted, and some of them still not being paid. Show me, Sean Hannity, where you and Fox News covered the black man in St. Louis who, as an undercover cop, was beaten by other cops, and earlier this week was awarded $27.5 million. Don't you sit your punk ass up there and go, oh yeah, Stephen A., you're right. There is bias in the criminal justice system when your sorry ass never talks about it and never covers it. In fact, you denigrate black people on a regular basis on the network. But no, you only said that because Stephen A. was supporting your position that the trials against Trump are him being persecuted when he's actually being prosecuted. But what I'm not going to do is let Sean Hannity even remotely get away with that when you have never seen them cover these cases. We do this every single day. And I can guarantee you're never going to see Sean Hannity on a consistent basis speaking against the criminal justice system. Because, matter of fact, play it again for the folk who didn't hear it. Just run it back one more time.
You're talking about racial disparity in our justice system. And you know what, Stephen A.? There has been. You're 1,000% right. Now, just for the record.
Here we go.
I was on
all
your
right,
podcast,
Sean.
like,
well, then you tell me,
a...
Sean, how many times have you covered black folks being beaten by jailers and by wardens in prisons? You tell me how many times have you covered these sorry, stank, nasty, decrepit prisons in Mississippi and Alabama and in Texas? You tell me how many times have you covered these cases? You tell me have you covered the case we did earlier of the brother who was shot and killed in Minneapolis and the family filed a federal lawsuit. Tell me, have you covered the case of the brother who was shot in Alabama we covered the other day? Tell me, Sean Hannity, how many times did you do stories on the goon squad who beat 2 black men, sexually assaulted them in Mississippi, and those 6 cops have been convicted on state and federal charges? Don't you dare sit there and pimp black people with that throwaway comment when you know damn well you do not, nor have you ever, Sean Hannity, stood with black people fighting racism, fighting what's happening in the criminal justice system. And Stephen A., you should have corrected him. You should have challenged him. Y'all, if I was on Stephen A.'s show, and I've been on many times, and Stephen A.'s supporter of this show, and I can call him and text him, but his facts were wrong. The data was wrong. And we have an obligation, I don't care whose show we do, whether it's ours or somebody else's, to present truth, to present facts. And the reality is, black folks ain't caping for Donald Trump or feeling for Donald Trump, thinking he's been persecuted. Donald Trump is a rich white man who has never, ever, ever been held accountable for his actions. That man started his career on racism. They used to mark C at the top of applications, and that's why the Department of Housing and Urban Development sued them for racial discrimination. That is a fact. Donald Trump was running around talking about illegal immigrants. And who do you think was working in his estates in New Jersey and in Florida? See, I'm going to call it what it is. And we're going to speak factually about this. Let me be absolutely clear. Above the Supreme Court, equal justice under law. But we know, because we can see it our own black eyes, that Donald Trump don't identify with any black person whatsoever. Because I dare anybody to put Donald Trump on a stage with that brother out of North Carolina who was in prison for almost 30 years. Put him on stage with black men who were on death row, who never did it. Please, by all means, I can't wait to see Sean Hannity invite Stephen A. Smith back, and invite Michael Harris, because he has a long thread on Twitter about it. But talk about Tara Moorhead in Kansas City. Oh, I can't wait to see a full week of coverage on Sean Hannity's show about discrimination and racism in the criminal justice system. It's one thing I will not do is hold my damn breath. Because if I do, I ain't going to be here on Monday.
Fanbase is pioneering a new era of social media for the creator economy. This next generation social media app with over 600,000 users is raising $17 million, and now is your chance to invest. For details on how to invest, visit startengine.com/fanbase or scan the QR code. Another way we're giving you the freedom to be you without limits.